Hello, everyone. Welcome to CIWEM West Midlands branch webinar focusing on reducing capital carbon infrastructure. This is part of the CIWEM Climate Emergency Adaptation and Resilience series. So I make it as 2 o'clock, so we can get started. So my name's Jen Yip. I'm part of the CIWEM West Midlands branch. So we'll go through some housekeeping first beforehand we hand over to Anna. So this webinar is going to be recorded. If you have any technical issues, can you just please raise your hand and use the chat feature on Zoom. We'll do a Q&A at the end, so could you write any questions in the Q&A and we'll address them. This counts for 1 hour of CPD, but as part of CIWEM, we don't produce any CPDs. Yes. So a bit about CIWEM is that it's a Royal Charter professional body and independent charity. You can find some links in the chat. There's around 11,000 members across 89 countries, about 57 organizations. We're a professional standards organization, and we work with the Engineering Council, Science Council, and Society for the Environment. So you'd be able to register if you do go for chartership with CIWEM, go for a chartered engineer, chartered scientist, or chartered environmentalist as well as various other grades. I myself am also a chartered scientist. Yeah, go back one slide. As part of the West Midlands branch, I think it's important that we realise that we won't solve climate change today, but my hope is to promote discussion and motivate that call to action, which also fits in with CIWEM's presidential theme this year of green roots and growing prosperity. Okay, so I'd like to hand over to Anna Yossi. She works in Severn Trent as well. Is it 12 years of experience?
Since 2012, so that makes it 14.
14 years of experience, my apologies.
It's okay.
Yes, so over to you, Anna.
Hello, everyone. I'm Anna Fionci. I'm a senior sustainability project manager in the capital sustainability team in Severn Trent, and I'll explain a little bit more about that in a minute. So we'll do a bit of contexting and then talk about the kind of things we are doing in the carbon team when it comes to setting up for reducing emissions from construction infrastructure. Why is important to talk about carbon emissions from construction or capital carbon? Because it is quite a significant percentage of the emissions worldwide, come from building materials and construction processes. And you might have heard about, when people talk about carbon emissions, you might have heard about the scopes 1, 2, and 3. Largely, we are talking about scope 3 here because those are indirect emissions. So, and what we mean by that is, we are a client company. We would hire a contractor, for example, to build something for us. So the contractor will be the kind of like the person emitting the carbon, but we are the client, we have hired them to do that. So that is our indirect emissions. So because of how the construction industry works, a significant amount of the emissions from the construction industry is Scope 3 emissions. And as you can imagine, because they are not directly emitted by us, they are not directly controlled by us. They can be influenced and we can drive them down, but we can't just send someone to click a button and like you would do, for example, with a pump. So it requires significant collaboration with our supply chain partners to progress with this. So other than they are important for kind of like the impact they have globally, it's something that's recognized by our regulators. So the water industry and Severn Trent Water are regulated, and our financial regulator is Ofwat. So they have evidently kind of demonstrated in the recent years how important embodied carbon is and how that importance in the recognition of that importance is growing. So they have mandated the reporting of embodied carbon emissions since April 23. We used to report it already, but we did it on a voluntary basis. And in the new investment period, we have started now, we're in year one. While we were shaping that and planning it, they strongly encouraged all the water companies to propose bespoke capital carbon reduction specific incentives. So Severn Trent are one of the water companies that have such an incentive. We proposed the bespoke capital carbon, we call them ODIs, outcome delivery incentives in the industry, and it was accepted. So we have one live at the moment. And the context of specifically what we're talking about today and what our team is looking after. So the capital sustainability team sits in the capital design and delivery department of the company. It has been recognized that a significant amount of the Scope 3 emissions of Severn Trent Water come from the work delivered by the capital design and delivery department. I think the latest figure I heard is about a third, but don't hold me to it. So it is a significant chunk, and so which means we have a significant scale of opportunity to influence here. And for people that work on capital projects, when you look at the diagrams, and these are diagrams from past 2080, which is like a globally recognized standard for carbon management in infrastructure and buildings. We are talking more about the kind of design and delivery stages of a project and the work delivered in the value chain by designers and contractors. So that is the context of the things we're talking about today. And one more contexting piece is talking about capital and embodied carbon. So what we mean by that is if someone's familiar with the life cycle stages A1 to A5, but if I was to explain that, then it is from the extraction of raw materials to transporting them to a factory, to manufacturing something out of these materials in a factory, then transporting them to a construction site, and then following some kind of construction installation process on the construction site. So it captures all that from the very beginning of getting materials all the way to the completion of construction. But it doesn't capture what is called more operational carbon, for example, like when after completion of construction, when that's handed over and starts being operated as an asset. So now that we gave a lot of kind of contexting, and particularly for people that don't interact with this on a day-to-day basis, more about what we do in our team in Severn Trent Water, and what have we done towards understanding and driving reductions. So an important thing we do is set up the processes and the rules really for people to follow in when it comes to capital projects. So we have pulled together, and this is since May 21, so it's been on for a significant amount of time already. A design manual, so that is like a standard. It's like a rule book. So this outlines for all the capital projects what are the requirements for the carbon management project process. Sorry. So through the project life cycle, there is carbon assessment, so calculating of carbon emissions required, and that is at every project stage. So from the beginning, when we're understanding after engineering finishes, for example, we know what solution we have chosen to take forward to design and construction. We're getting an understanding even at that point of some high level estimate of how much carbon we're expecting to be emitted by this solution. And then we're refining that as we're going through the stages. And obviously, when you have finished the construction, you know what those emissions actually are, and that's the final number. But the other thing that is also part of the process is a reduction target. So there are reduction targets focused on the design stages of a capital project that need to be achieved, considering like all the opportunities that are available, which obviously vary depending on the project. And we recently, actually, this is not a stale document. We recently updated it. It was about 6 months ago. We updated it again, and it was a plethora of like feedback that we received. So we incorporated a lot of improvements in it. We realigned it to the revised kind of ambitions of the company in this new investment period, and for example, the incentives I mentioned earlier. So we have improved it and made clarifications and embedded a lot of supporting information in it as well. Another thing we do is set up how this carbon calculation is done. So the carbon calculation, the carbon assessment is a key part of the process that I mentioned that we have mandated for projects. So in order for that to be consistent and aligned, because that is really important, certainly for regulatory reporting, but also for managing it effectively through the project life cycle, we have developed a carbon calculation approach and tools to do this calculation with. So all our internal designers and all our value chain members, all our supply chain partners have to use this one consistent way of calculation to make sure that everything is comparable. Also, in order for it's all well and good putting processes in place, but you have to ensure these processes will be adhered to. So there's various ways in which we encourage and also try to enforce in some way the compliance with the process. One of the ways that has been quite successful is in embedding carbon consideration in project gate reviews. So you can see actually a little snip from that at the bottom in the picture. There is a table, there's a specific section on the gate papers and a table that demonstrates to decision makers that the assessments, the carbon calculations have happened for this project and the reduction targets have been achieved. And that would be required for a project to move to the next delivery stage. There is also a performance dashboard, so that is in place to effectively manage the compliance to the process. So what the requirements I mentioned earlier around assessment and reduction, so that kind of enables performance conversations and tracking across the portfolio. There are requirements. So for if you work on projects, you usually have what I used to find a very useful tool when I was a delivery manager myself, a little checklist of what things I have to deliver at the end of the project. So we made sure the carbon assessments and the carbon reduction requirements are embedded in those checklists to make sure people are reminded that this is another deliverable that they need to make sure comes out of the project. And to make the kind of governance robust, because, like I said, there's a design manual in place, which is a mandated standard for projects. In order to deviate from this process, it will require sign-off from the standard owner. So there's quite a lot of governance we have put in place, but at the end of the day, it's people that make these decisions. It's people that make these calculations. It's people that will have to think about carbon and kind of choose the right options appropriately. So, we know that it is a big challenge for every industry for people to engage with the carbon emissions kind of like area. It is something invisible. It's much harder when it's something you can't touch, and carbon emissions are invisible. We are asking people to change the way they think and change how they do things. And maybe the scariest part is we'll allow all this to influence how they make important decisions. So we're trying to do quite a lot to help people through this change. We have a lot of training available with regards to materials and also live sessions. We are open to feedback and improving processes because we know our processes, and I don't think any of the processes out there are perfect because this is a very fast moving picture, but they are very much needed. Both from a business perspective and to make sure we address climate change. So we want to improve them, but we have to have them in place. And we offer drop-in sessions where people can come and ask us questions, and we have created a central inbox where they can send all their questions and get some support from the team. And we kind of do sessions very similar to this to explain to people why it is important and how they can actually make a difference. And especially working together, we can make a massive difference. So examples of engagement and education, a few visuals, we deliver quite a few, like I said, training sessions or awareness sessions or education around low carbon design thinking or low carbon design solutions, materials, case studies. We take part in panels about sustainability or carbon in the company. I do a lot of sessions with teams across the company or within our supply chain, which I'm going to talk a bit more about in a minute. And we are also big on the kind of like social media front and comms. So we use a lot of different platforms to communicate and make sure people are kind of like learning all the latest about carbon, and put articles in newsletters and posters and all sorts. And also sometimes we try to make it a bit fun. So this is my manager who's not with us today. She's not presenting with me is what I mean. Likes talking about food a lot. And she has this framework about how low carbon, reducing carbon in construction is like eating cake on a diet. So when the first thing obviously you could do is not eat the cake. Who wants to do that? And similarly, you can construct nothing, which in an infrastructure world where we have to upgrade our infrastructure is not really an option. So that is not something we want to do. So we're going to move to the next option. What's the next option on the hierarchy? Building something smaller or eating a smaller cake. So you can have a cupcake or a one-layered cake. And in a construction sense, you could think about how to do some value engineering and build something that has less volume of material, for example. Or then we could replace the ingredients of our cake. We could replace chocolate with fruit. We could replace, sugar with honey or something like that. Reduce the calorific content. You can do something similar in construction by reducing the carbon emissions from concrete, for example, by reducing the cement content. So there's, and obviously the thing that no one ever wants to do is eat all the cake and then have to go to the gym and burn all those calories, which is very similar to constructing everything in a very traditional way and then having to offset those emissions. So just a fun little tool. It usually comes back to food in our team, for engaging people on a more like human level. And also we have a lot of guidance. So there we have a central SharePoint page, and on there they're publicized a growing portfolio of case studies. Some of these are internal from the company, and loads of them are external from the industry, with like some practical examples, and I think demonstrating to people this can be done and there are various ways to do it. There's a lot of guidance on construction materials, for low carbon options that are out there, and like lists of different alternatives you could look into. There is a template called an opportunities tracker that asks designers the questions they kind of, I think most designers will have thought about, but they haven't like connected it with carbon positive impact. So asks the questions on the carbon hierarchy about all the considerations and all the opportunities that could be available for reducing carbon. And also we do a lot of lunch and learn sessions, and we always, as well as have them live, because not everyone can attend all of them. We also have slides and recordings available. And we have linked people to also a lot of useful external publications. So there's a wealth of materials for educating oneself and making sure we understand enough to drive carbon reduction. And like I said in the beginning, collaboration with the supply chain here is key, because our supply chain partners are directly controlling the emissions that are indirect emissions. So there's a combination again of governance and engagement into how we work with the supply chain teams and make our processes and our requirements clear. So the requirements are embedded in the contracts. That is kind of the agreement we have with our supply chain partners. And there's a dedicated clause in the contracts or carbon reduction, and mirroring in some way the incentives and the metrics, the performance metrics we have as a company. There are performance metrics for the supply chain as well, for compliance to carbon requirements and performance. And then from an engagement point of view, we've set up a carbon reduction innovation forum that happens 3-4 times a year, brings supply chain partners and stakeholders together for a day. And we usually collaborate in various ways towards driving carbon emissions down, whether that is from innovation or different materials or different processes. And we often are invited to do training either for the technical experts or the project teams, and we offer that up to all the supply chain kind of proactively or from a push and pull perspective. And also they're obviously free to be supported through our inbox for queries as well. So like I said, it is a very fast moving picture. The industry is moving fast. The requirements are moving fast. So we are trying to stay connected to the industry, both the water industry and the construction industry, and learn from the best practice and kind of like shape our plans depending on that. So those are just a few little pictures from what we've been out and about educating ourselves. And there's a lot of other things that we are starting to do now. So I touched on concrete and cement earlier because, again, cement's recognized having a significant impact of carbon emissions globally. I think it's estimated to be about 8% of global emissions. And just in case you don't know, not everyone does like civil engineering stuff or material stuff. Cement is a key component of concrete. And although from a volumetric perspective, it's not a massive component, it is a significant part of concrete's emission. So we have learned from the construction industry and the water industry at driving kind of actions around reducing concrete and reducing cement content in concrete. And now we're exploring and investigating options for specifying low carbon materials and specifically around concrete at the concrete area within our civils and structural standards. And we recently kind of went ahead very recently. It's published this month, I think. We are going to specify a ban on the kind of high content in cement concretes, the very high ones. So learning from the industry and taking some steps to the right direction, and we have plans for investigating and kind of taking further steps in the future. Other things we do is work on some new developments around standardized assets that are designed using modern methods of construction and value engineering thinking. So trying to add the carbon emissions understanding and benefits from these in the narrative and in the business cases and the decision making around these assets, as well as just starting to embed carbon considerations more specific on the materials front on procurement and kind of tenders. So this is like all the kind of very new things we're working on, the reduction space, and is aligned with the industry good practice. And something not to forget, just because we talk a lot about carbon emissions in this presentation does not mean that carbon emissions are the only decision factor. It is really important to ensure that the transition to net zero is just, and that means, and these are like various quotes on there from our regulators, for example, where we are required when making a decision around an opportunity to reduce carbon emissions to take a holistic kind of consideration into a decision. So just because something is reducing carbon emissions on a construction project, we need to also think about, is it impacting the environment in a different way? Is it potentially, in some cases, impacting the society adversely? Is it also, and if you think about it wider, is it health and safety risk? Is it an operational risk? So it needs to be, carbon emissions consideration needs to be in decision making as one of the elements, but it will not be the only one decision factor. And in the words of one of our favorite people, going back to my first slide, if working apart, we are forces powerful enough to destabilize our planet. Surely working together, we are powerful enough to save it. So this is something for you to take away with you in case you did not recognize the colors on my first slide. That was the global temperature change from the Industrial Revolution to today. You can see colors getting warmer, and it is also recognized that is different around the globe in different places. So I'm from Greece, so it's important for me to understand that the climate impact is different in Greece than it is in the UK and that it is in other places in the world. And we can all make a difference to this from the work we do. So if you're interested into talking to your friends about this kind of thing, this is usually something people love doing. You can go to your Show Your Stripes website, and they can find out in their city, where they come from in the UK, what is the change in global temperature since Industrial Revolution. So, right, there you go. I think nicely timed. I don't know, it's time for questions. I don't know if we have anything in the chat already.
Yeah, we've got a few questions.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Anna. It's really interesting. Thank you.
Good.
So we've got a question. So is carbon reduction incentivized in your contracts with suppliers?
So there are let me see. So there's in the contracts reflect the requirements and of the standard. In the key performance metrics, I believe those metrics work as incentives. So there's a big list of, this is not my area of expertise, my commercial colleagues will be probably best for this, but there's a big list of key performance metrics. Consultants and contractors, so our supply chain partners that work with us, have to have a performance against all these different metrics. And at the end of the day, that performance determines some incentives for them. So in that way, then yes, it is incentivized.
Okay, thank you. Got another question?
Yes.
How are carbon reduction targets set within the design manual? And are you willing to pay more for low carbon solutions, either directly, including a carbon tax and optioneering?
Okay, so say that. I think there was two-barreled. Break it. Tell me the first one first.
How are carbon reduction targets set within the design manual?
Right. Okay. So the design manual outlines the process, the requirements at every stage of the capital project life cycle. For the two design stages, so outline design and detailed design, there are carbon reduction targets. The newest version is they are aligned with our regulatory incentives, so they're targets on embodied and capital carbon, and that's how they're set. And actually, they're slightly different depending on the type of project, how big scale the project is, and the kind of scale of opportunity. So I'm hoping that answers that question about how it's done.
The second part was, are you willing to pay more for low carbon solutions, either directly or by including a carbon tax in optioneering?
So we do not have that embedded in the process at the moment. There's requirements, like I said, to comply with the targets, and that is not something that comes with a payment, which I think is what we're trying to allude here. We know when you're starting to step into low carbon materials, that in that space, usually there are some premium costs. So there's not a generic kind of like commitment to that. On a case by case basis, it's something that we can have a discussion about.
Okay, great. Next question is, have you identified any other materials that can be used instead of cement? Interesting.
Ooh, okay. Now you're entering to a bit of technical space. I'm not very technical on the material front, but I know there's a lot of work being done across the construction industry and the materials industry and kind of the concrete industry specifically for reducing impact from concrete. There are various ways to do this. One way is to replace the cement content, for example. And there are various things out there that are offered and innovations that various companies are working on with regards to replacement. So we are aware of a range of different options for this. There is not one or two things. There's, if anyone's interested, there's the low carbon concrete route map, I think it's called, by the Institute of Civil Engineers, that has a lot of information about reducing emissions from concrete. And there's a lot of information from the Construction Leadership Council, from the Institute of Structural Engineers. So there's a lot of available options, and there's a lot of work that is focusing on this area. So we're aware of many different ones, I think is the answer. But if people are interested, there's a lot of materials out there to learn from.
Yeah, thank you. It's a very interesting question. I'm just thinking back to your cake analogy about burning off a cake.
Yes.
Are we looking into anything with to do with carbon capture?
Not at the moment, no. I think the absolute ideal is for us to work in in the carbon hierarchy, in effect. So we want to look at how we can optimize our designs anyway, because that's the best thing to do from a cost perspective as well. So you reduce what you build, you emit less, but also you spend less. So obviously, we're a regulated company. We have a lot of infrastructure to build for our customers. So that's the first thing we would do, and then we would think about alternatives with regards to materials replacements and what is available commercially, but also technically. Capture technologies are growing, especially in the concrete front. So and there's a lot of talk and promotion in industry and exhibitions about it. So they potentially will start playing a role in this in the future.
Yeah, thank you. It's not as fun as it's either diet or gym or both.
It's yes, I think magic about it making it disappear is not quite maybe there yet. I'm not an expert on this.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, do you set a carbon budget for each project?
That is an excellent question. I wonder if I know where this came from. We do not have a carbon budget for this project now. That's not how we are governing it at the moment. It is one of the things that we are aware of as a tool and a lever that we could use for the future, and it's a good one to consider.
Okay, thank you. Next question is, do you have any metrics to determine whether a project or portfolio is high or low embodied carbon? For example, carbon per £1 million spend or something else?
Sorry, say that again.
Do you have any metrics to determine whether a project or portfolio is high or low in embodied carbon? For example, tons of carbon per £1 million spend.
Okay, I think they use this. We don't at the moment use this metric. It is used by some other water companies for sure. I think it's like an intensity metric. So at the moment we are not especially using that as a metric. But again, this is a forever evolving thing, and we're in a completely new investment period now. So I think it's potentially something we will start considering. But I think in that sense, usually what I can say is potentially the financial scale of a project is a strong indication of the scale of emissions in a project, which is not quite the same. But that is kind of like the kind of consideration we'll be looking at.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, do you know if similar standards or teams are being implemented in water companies across the UK?
Right. So yes. So there are. We talk with a lot of our colleagues in other water companies on a regular basis. So we have forums where we, like I said, this is a forever evolving thing, where we kind of keep abreast of what we're doing and we share knowledge, and we learn from a lot. So I know I can't say for all the water companies, but I know there are teams that are not quite the same as ours, but are similar in the other water companies that I interact with, which is quite a few of them. Sometimes they are placed in a different part of the organization. Sometimes there's more people, sometimes there's less, fewer people, but they surely do have teams. Standards wise, I think it's not consistently done the same way. I know some water companies manage this through standards and specifications, and I'm not sure if they have, because we have a dedicated standard that kind of like mandates the carbon requirements. I'm not sure if they have a dedicated standard on this as such, but I know with many companies, they do have changes or influences in their that they're considering, or they have already implemented in their, like the civil standards that I mentioned earlier.
Okay, thank you. How about more international cooperation as well? As in, are we including best practices from the US?
So it's interesting. So I think first step to that is we are not just looking to the water industry, we're looking to the construction industry in general, because there are a lot of big construction clients out there that are really driving these emissions. So people that have touched on this may have heard about the good work HS2 are doing on reducing carbon emissions, or Lower Thames Crossing projects. So these are like big kind of leading projects in the construction industry that we're learning from within the UK. I think globally, I would say it's an interesting consideration, especially when it comes to low carbon construction materials. So a lot of the time in the conversations I'm having about, I'm going to go back to concrete. My background civil engineering, you can blame it on that. I think it is interesting that a lot of the time when it comes to concrete or concrete reinforcement, for example, we hear about options that are lower carbon that are used in places like the US or other European countries, but for whatever reason haven't trickled through in the UK, and may not be quite as adopted in our British standards either. So there seems to be an interesting tension from like something that is used as BAU somewhere else, but in the UK it's seen as an innovative thing that's outside standards. So that's definitely an area where we are trying to learn and maybe be a bit more critical about those kind of opportunities and examples.
Yeah, I suppose some of our colleagues who work in international contractors, yeah, they would be able to advise as well on that. They'd be able to inform on that. Okay, great. Do we have any more questions? If not, it doesn't seem like we've got any more questions. So thank you all for listening. Thank you, Anna, for that. It was really interesting.
Good.
So some wrap up from CIWEM itself. If anyone would like a platform to host a webinar, you feel free to contact the West Midlands Branch Committee, myself included, Jen Yip. And the contact details were on the organisation slide for this webinar on CIWEM. A few other events are coming up, including the Early Careers Professional Challenge, the Flood and Coast Conference in Liverpool, actually, on the 9th to 11th of June. It's quite a big one. And another event, in-person event that the West Midlands branch is hosting is the Dr. Jenkins Earlier Careers Competition. That'll be on the 23rd of September in Birmingham. Okay.